Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, Google, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
and Peter. Episode 44, recorded on October 22nd, 2019. CloudWatch detects the Cloud Pod as an anomaly.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't mess it up.
First try, too.
First try. Yes. Hey, how's it going, Jonathan?
It's good. It's been an interesting week so far.
Yeah, it's been interesting. We've been doing some interesting projects at work that are really good, but very busy. We are missing Peter this evening. He's AWOL. We don't know where he's at, but we have a show to record. The podcast must go on, so we're gonna do this without Peter tonight. So that's I think it's a first for us, isn't it? Just two of us.
I think so. Yeah, or maybe he's stuck in traffic. It is the Bay Area after all.
Yeah, well, actually, I think maybe you had an emergency one time and it was just Peter and I, but maybe we had a guest that time or something. I don't know. It worked out fine.
Yep.
It's all good. Hey, I did. Someone mentioned on the Slack channel actually that they have been listening to the show for a while and had not known that we have a Slack channel. So I thought I'd mention it in the intro instead of at the end. We do have a Slack channel. If you'd like to talk to Jonathan or Peter or I at the cloudpod.net, you can find a link to get a Slack invite to our Slack channel. And there's a bunch of lovely fellows there and ladies who are all talking about cloud and talking to us. And so we're always happy to have people join us in the chat room. Join us, introduce yourself in the announcements room. And just let us know what you think of the show, where you found us, and all kinds of good things like that, because it's good information for us to have. And we'd love to engage with you, our audience. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's so exciting to see the variety of people that we have and learn about how they found us.
My still favorite is the shout out to the investment bankers or the hedge fund guys in Europe. Such an interesting story there. So anyways, things you can find out on the chat room, but you can't find out here on the show. So let's get into it. We have some sad news as our first story. Oracle's Mark Hurd, who was on medical leave, as we talked about right before Oracle Open World, has died at the age of 62. We briefly mentioned this back then. He died on Friday, October 18th, and Oracle family have not disclosed details of medical leave nor the cause of death, but Larry did post a note on Mark's website, Larry Ellison. It is with profound sense of sadness and loss that I tell everyone here at Oracle that Mark Hurd passed away early this morning. Mark was my close and irreplaceable friend and trusted colleague. Oracle has lost a brilliant and beloved leader who personally touched the lives of so many of us during this decade at Oracle. All of us will miss Mark's keen mind and rare ability to analyze, simplify, and solve problems quickly. Some of us will miss his friendship and mentorship. I will miss his kindness and sense of humor. Mark leaves his beloved wife Paula, two wonderful daughters who were the joy of his life, and his much larger extended family here at Oracle who have come to love him. I know that many of us are inconsolable right now, but we are left with the memories and a sense of gratitude that we had the opportunity to get to know Mark, the opportunity to work with him, and become his friend. Larry Ellison. And Ellison, if you remember, when he was fired by HP, said the HP board just made the worst personnel decision since the idiots at Apple board fired Steve Jobs many years ago. So Larry has always been a really big fan of Mark and a really big loss for the tech community as a whole. And but my apologies to the family and the mourning his friends and everything. That's sad news.
Yeah, as much as we kind of tease Oracle, I think most of that's aimed at Larry Ellison, and I think Mark did a fantastic job. And it kind of saddens me to think that somebody like him has dedicated so much of his life to a lot of very good work, only to kind of have his what should have been his enjoyable retirement someplace taken from him.
Yeah, it's too bad. Well, let's move on to other bad news. Well, this isn't really bad news for most of the industry, but IBM, it's bad news. Apparently, despite the Redhat acquisition, IBM has missed their revenue target. IBM Corp missed Wall Street estimates on revenues during its third quarter. Revenues for the quarter was $18 billion, down 3% year over year, and below the Wall Street estimate of $18.22 billion. The Redhat acquisition did provide some boosts to the earnings, which saw revenue grow 6.4% to $5.28 billion. And Ramadi, the CEO, said, "Our results demonstrate that clients see IBM and Redhat as a powerful combination, and they trust us to provide them with the open hybrid cloud technology, innovation, and industry expertise to help them shift their mission-critical workloads to the cloud." Patrick Moorhead of More Insights and Strategy told SiliconANGLE, anyone who thought there was going to be an instant value between Redhat and IBM was being too optimistic. I think we're looking at a few quarters like this until we see synergistic benefits. I actually don't know if it's a few quarters. It might be years before they really see synergistic benefits.
Yeah, maybe. I was kind of hoping they would have had something in the bag or something prepared, ready to roll out to wow us with this new partnership. And a bit disappointed they haven't had anything so far.
I actually don't know when IBM does big conferences or things like that. Is that maybe that's where that's all going to come out in the future? Let's see. I'm googling real live time on the podcast, which doesn't help anything. So apparently they have IBM Think, which will be in May in San Francisco. So maybe that's where the big announcements will be coming from the partnership.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm surprised actually IBM haven't taken more of a front seat in the progress of AI, especially given their history with Watson.
Isn't Watson kind of the beginning of AI and machine learning in a big way? Like, I mean, it seems like they kind of founded the industry, and then they do offer Watson as a service, so they sort of have some stuff in that area.
I think it's probably one of the closest things we've got to what I'm going to consider real AI versus what really I think most people use the term AI when they really mean sort of a complex statistical analysis and predictions based on learning patterns, which perhaps people couldn't see. But I mean, the fact that Watson was so good even 5 years ago at answering questions he didn't know about, unprepared questions, was pretty cool. I wish we'd seen more from them around that. And maybe they're working on it. I know they're certainly working on quantum computing and experimenting with some of that stuff. But yeah, I'd like to think they've got some cool stuff in the pipeline.
It'll be very interesting to see what they have up their sleeves. It's interesting, actually, as you were talking, I noticed that there's also a Red Hat Summit, April 27th through the 29th, followed the week later by the IBM Summit, also in San Francisco. So I guess that's some synergies in conference budgets. So there you go, some cost synergies from IBM and Red Hat.
Wow, that Red Hat Summit, that's more expensive than reInvent.
Really? I've never been. I've never had interest.
It's $1,900.
Oof. Well, I mean, I saw someone complain the other day about how expensive reInvent was, and they were like, it's like $4,600. And I was like, what are you talking about? And by the time you add hotel and airfare and all that in that week, it is a bit pricey. But
oh yeah, I mean that does include the hotel, and that's in Boston as well this year, which is not known for its cheap accommodation.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey everyone, Jonathan here. I just wanted to take a minute to thank the cloud consulting gurus at Foghorn for helping make the Cloud Pod possible. These folks truly get it. Cloud consulting experts since 2008, they are premier tier partners with AWS, Google Cloud Platform Silver, and Microsoft Azure partners. From multi-cloud to containers to moving full production workloads to the cloud under the tightest compliance, Foghorn's team of full-stack cloud engineers have been there, done that, gotten the t-shirt, and are ready to share their experience with you. If you're in the market for some talent to supplement your team, visit www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. www.fogops.io/thecloudpod. Foghorn, the promise of cloud delivered.
Defense Secretary Mark Esper, who's the U.S. Secretary of Defense, has removed himself from the review process of the JEDI contract after it was revealed that one of his sons is working at one-time bidder IBM Corp. And Deputy Secretary David Norquist said, out of abundance of caution to avoid any concerns regarding his impartiality, Secretary Esper has delegated decision-making concerns of the JEDI Cloud program to Deputy Secretary Norquist. The JEDI procurement will continue to move to selection through the normal acquisition process run by the career acquisition professionals. So that's interesting. I was kind of shocked by this story, and then I found out that IBM released a statement in the article saying Secretary Esper's son has been a digital strategy consultant with IBM services only since February. So I think IBM was eliminated at that point, and according to IBM, his role is unrelated to IBM's pursuit of JEDI.
Yeah, I'm sure, but I feel like with Oracle going after their competitors in this, even a conflict of interest which didn't serve Google or AWS is probably something they would have picked on in court. So it's probably a good thing that he's kind of ducked out of the decision process.
I'm still hoping that they might award this contract this year. I'm not confident, but I hope they will.
Yeah, it's taken a long time.
Well, I mean, it was supposed to be announced in June, and then got delayed because of the politics of the nation. So that is what it is. Well, moving on to AWS, they have announced Amazon CloudWatch Anomaly Detection. Of course, CloudWatch has been around for quite a while, released in early 2009, so apparently it's 10 years old. Jonathan, happy birthday to CloudWatch. And you can use this to build sophisticated, scalable, and robust web apps for AWS. Unfortunately, of course, setting CloudWatch alarms can be a bit of an art more than a science. And so if you want to catch things early, you set the threshold early, but then that might end up being false positives. And to address this, AWS is releasing the Anomaly Detection. Powered by machine learning and building over on a decade of experience, CloudWatch Anomaly Detection has its roots in over 12,000 internal models and will allow you to avoid manual configurations and experimentations, and can be used in conjunction with any standard or custom CloudWatch metric that is trend or pattern-based. I actually looked at the instructions how to set this up. It's pretty simple. You just go into your CloudWatch dashboard, find a chart that like CPU utilization. There's a little new wave icon you click on, and it'll give you a kind of a default view to kind of show you what's the normal upper and lower watermarks and what would be outside of that watermark. And then you can click the edit button, and you can make adjustments to exclude periods of time. If you're using it for something like batch processing in the middle of the night and you want it to be 100%, but you don't want that to be included in your model, you can exclude those type of things. And you can create alerts based on all of this, very, very simple in a few clicks. There are a few things to keep in mind, of course. Suitable metrics. So if it is not a pattern or a trend-based metric, this will not work for you very well. And then updates for the model are done every 5 minutes based on the last metric data. And the one-time events for things like Black Friday or holiday shopping seasons are not easily to predict and will not work typically in this model. And in the first that I think I've seen, they are announcing API, CLI, and CloudFormation support day one. So you're welcome.
Yeah, thankfully they had the criticism about lack of CloudFormation support, because it must be an embarrassment to have Terraform roll out support for the new services before they do it themselves. But yeah, there's definitely some magic around CloudWatch metrics and dimensions and getting that reporting to work. It's less than transparent, I think, but yeah, it's pretty neat. I hope we can use it to easily disable alerts during maintenance times and things like that when we expect an outage, but we don't want people to get paged.
Well, another I just kept forgetting all these amazing reInvent announcements that haven't shipped. That they come back and I'm like, oh yeah, that was announced at reInvent. The Amazon Relational Database Services on VMware has finally shipped. This allows you to run Amazon RDS on-premise in your VMware environment. The service is launching with support for Microsoft SQL Server, PostgreSQL, and MySQL. There are several prerequisites. You must be running vSphere 6.5 or higher. You must allow outbound connectivity to AWS's public endpoints, and each cluster must have at least 24 vCPUs, 24 gigabytes of memory, and 180 gigs of storage from the on-premise management components of RDS. There are 3 classes of RDS instances you can run on this: the general purpose, memory optimized, and compute optimized. But I have to tell you, Jonathan, this one isn't cheap. So not only do you have to buy the hardware, you have to pay for the bandwidth to and from the data center to support this, and the licensing. But you have to. Well, I think the licensing might be included, but you actually pay them an hourly fee on top of that. And this thing starts at for 1 vCPU and 4 gigs of memory from MySQL. It'll cost you $62.49, Jonathan. And for a reasonable database server, which is the 8 vCPU with 32 gigs of memory, that's at least $500.
Is this monthly?
Monthly, yes.
Whoa.
And the most expensive is the memory optimized with 96 vCPU and 768 gigs of memory. Will cost you a smooth $12,000 per month for Amazon to just manage your database for you in your environment. So
that's just mind blowing. I mean, if it's not even their hardware, wow. Hang on, let me sit down. The escalation of that cost. I mean, I can't imagine that it's significantly more work to do to manage a slightly bigger instance or a slightly smaller instance. So that seems kind of price gouging, really. Yeah,
well, and if this was SQL Server and include your SQL Server licensing, maybe it'd be okay. But like, this is just my SQL pricing. I didn't even click on the SQL Server pricing tab because I was afraid to. But yeah, I was a little shocked at how expensive this actually was based on what it is and what it can or can't provide to you. There's some interesting things though, like you create your own private AZ in your data center that you had to set up, and there's a couple interesting things in general about it. But it is good to see this feature ship. But I assume this is priced prohibitively on purpose to keep people from massively adopting it for a little while, or they get it proved out.
Well, just think they can announce 98% cost savings at reInvent in a few weeks' time.
Yeah.
But wow, that's expensive.
Okay. Wow. So get this on the. So I did click on the Microsoft SQL site, I said it, and I felt bad for the listeners. But customers using Microsoft SQL Server must provide their own media and license for Microsoft SQL Server. So not only so you're paying for the VMware infrastructure, you're paying for the bandwidth in your data center and the storage, and you're paying for the Microsoft license. And for that privilege, the price, and these are hourly prices, I didn't cover these two, but for a 1 vCPU 4 gig box, it's 25 cents an hour.
Okay.
Which, if my quick math here, is $200 a month. The 96 vCPU 384 gigabyte box is $24.38 per hour.
$24 and how much? 38 cents. Wow,
Yes.
that's almost $18,000.
That is over $18,000. And for the memory optimized, which is the most expensive option you can get on all of these, for 96 vCPU and 768 gigs of RAM, is $36.57 an hour. And they're not including licenses in this. You paid for your own license, so you're welcome.
You could you could hire a team of people.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, so that's a $30,000 to have a managed RDS database cluster in your account. So
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I really don't want people to use this.
it's not for the faint of heart, and it's definitely something that you should consider before jumping into this one. But I'm glad they're doing it. I think it is an interesting use case. Wow, those prices. Oof.
Oh, well, I can't understand why they don't just refer people to. I mean, RDS has its advantages, I guess, but most of those are that somebody else manages the hardware and everything else, and the uptime and the power and the internet connectivity. But I'm surprised they don't just refer people to partners for managing databases.
It would seem to be easier to use a company that does manage database services than to pay for this. But I don't know. I haven't bought those services yet. Maybe they're expensive as well. This does also support the RDS console, the RDS CLI, and the RDS APIs. So that's nice. You get the same thing. And the VMware stuff it's a little bit of a setup process, I will admit. Even Jeff Barr in his blog post says, I'm not going to detail all the steps because it's complicated. But the summary of it is, you're creating networks, you're creating special accounts for this, you're creating outbound internet access through a vSphere cluster. So there's quite a bit of setup process to get this initially set up. But then once you have it, it should be just clicks in the console just like normal. So there was a great blog post by Claire Ligori. She's a pretty active AWS blogger and Twitter user in the industry. I think she's a principal engineer, if I remember correctly, or senior staff or something level. I should probably know that, but I don't. So I apologize to Claire if she's listening. But she wrote a great blog post, Containers and Infrastructure as Code Like Peanut Butter and Jelly, is the name of the post. And she gives you a lot of examples of how to use infrastructure as code and tools like CloudFormation and Terraform to enable teams to describe and automate provisioning of cloud infra resources, including container-related resources like ECS and EKS. She talks about how applications are fully contained in a container, which we all know. And she later goes on to talk about a couple of things that are new to me, and I thought that's the reason why we're highlighting this article. The first is what she calls the next phase, which is architecture as code. And to elaborate on this, they actually released a GitHub repo called the AWS CDK ECS patterns that demonstrates this architecting as code concept. And so she goes on to talk about, typically an architect draws a lot of boxes on a board with different lines, and this is a way to basically articulate that, but in a code type format, and then use that to actually build out your infrastructure. They've also written a public proposal for their plans for a few ECS CLI tools designed around architecture as code model. And they're actually accepting feedback right now. So if this is something that kind of interested you as an architect or something you want to check out, definitely check out this blog post and then follow that link to her public proposal for their CLI tool, and you can help contribute to this. It sounds really interesting.
Oh, cool. So it seems like it's going to take the pain out of orchestrating microservice deployments.
Yeah, that's basically what they're trying to do, which is really great.
Yeah. What I'd like to see even more so is for people to stop using the word infrastructure. I think really what we consider infrastructure in the data center is not the infrastructure in the cloud. Those things are just services that we use, that we leverage for our applications. So I think we should start considering those part of the applications and part of the architecture rather than infrastructure.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, Amazon has joined the Java Community Process, or JCP for short. Amazon has been a big user of Java with over thousands of Java production services on various versions of JDKs, including 8 and 11. As you know, we talked about on the show, they invested in Java with Corretto, which is their open distribution of OpenJDK. And they're providing upstream code back to the OpenJDK distros, as well as the Java Vulnerability Group. Then at OSCON this year, they announced the Amazon Corretto Crypto Provider to accelerate crypto operations for all OpenJDK distributions, which is a purpose-built module for that one function, which is really great. I think we talked about it maybe in the lightning round before. But now they're happy to announce the Amazon has joined the Java Community Process, which is the Java Platform Standards Organization, and the JCP is a repo for all Java specifications. And Amazon is excited to participate and contribute even more to the Java and open source communities. So, whether screwing over everyone else like Elasticsearch, they're definitely helping core open source projects like Java, which is really great. I
guess they had to do this to get their crypto provider sort of publicly accepted into OpenJDK, but the performance improvements from their crypto provider is mind-blowing, really. To think that minor code changes could yield like 10 or 15% reductions in CPU usage is really cool.
That's actually a great article. If you're into crypto, I think Colm has a Twitter thread or a blog post that he wrote about this on the security blog. Definitely really interesting if you're into those type of things to read his take on it.
Yep.
Google has made the 100 gigabits dedicated interconnect and the HA VPN general available today. They're both announced at Next 2019. With the HA VPN, you can connect your on-premises deployment to a Google Cloud VPC with industry-leading SLA of 99.99% uptime catered to your mission-critical workloads. And the new interconnect, the 100 gigabit dedicated interconnect, allows you to provide 10 times the capacity of our previous interconnect offering and can be combined into link aggregation groups to bring massive amounts of bandwidth directly to the Google Cloud from your on-premise data centers. So that's those are probably also very expensive, but very nice to have if you have those mission-critical needs and bandwidth requirements.
It's all right. I'm still sitting down following the RDS cost thing, so I didn't see any price for this, but I imagine if you have to ask, you can't afford it.
That may be very true. Also, Google's announcing the full support of SQL Server for Cloud SQL. As they say, leave no database behind with Cloud SQL for SQL Server, which is redundancy for the redundancy department of SQL. This is a beta launch and available to all customers today. And highlights of the Cloud SQL for SQL Server are, of course, compatibility, as this is a full SQL Server version that supports the SQL Server Management Studio, flexible backup schedule for automatic daily backups or to run them on demand. They have scalability to enable the automatic storage increase configuration, and Cloud SQL will add storage capacity whenever you approach the limit, and easily scale up your customized machine's memory and processor cores as necessary. There is built-in high availability with the enabled for all editions to singularly replicate data to each zone regionally through persistent disk. And there are some new features coming soon, including Active Directory integration, read replicas, expanded machine types, and online migration tools. So again, if you're doing SQL Server, you can now have a managed service offering for you on Google.
Wow, let's hope they offer this in the private data center too.
But they can put it on the or Anthos. Sorry, Anthos. Yeah. It's been a long day.
Lots of A's.
Lots of A's.
I wonder if they run this on Windows, whether they're really on Linux. They don't mention it, I don't think, in the article.
I mean, if I was building a native cloud service that I want to have managed, I'd probably do it on Linux, so I can take advantage of all the great open source tools for configuration management.
I haven't ever really looked into Cloud SQL or how it compares to RDS, really. Do they provide as much management as RDS? Yeah,
very similar. Managed backups, managed scaling, failover. They use the same type of CNAME type mechanism that they do on AWS and Azure. So it's a fully managed RDS-like database service. I think it's only supported MySQL and Postgres to date, so this is nice to expand this out to SQL Server as well.
Yeah, cool.
Yep, speaking of SQL Server, let's move on to Azure. Azure has unveiled 2 open source projects for building cloud and edge applications. The first one is the Open Application Model, a specification for building cloud-native apps on Kubernetes. The OAM is intended to simplify the development and deployment of apps managed by Kubernetes, which everyone's trying to do, so thanks Microsoft for doing it too. Is a specification for describing applications to ensure the app is separated from how it is deployed and managed. Interestingly, Microsoft said it had to work closely with Alibaba Cloud on OAM because they realized that open source standards won't be successful without the buy-in of other key players in the market.
Yeah, and Alibaba is certainly lined up to be a huge competitor for Azure, I would think, and I feel like they're just sort of sitting in the sidelines waiting to pounce on these top 3 providers right now.
Well, I mean, Alibaba is the biggest cloud you can get in China, so
yeah.
Microsoft's cloud and AWS's cloud is very small compared to what Alibaba's doing. So it makes sense that this partnership can become much deeper over time, something to what they've done with Oracle Cloud. That might make it really interesting for several reasons. The second open source tool they announced is a tool called Dapper. It's a portable, event-driven runtime for building microservice-based apps that can run in the cloud and on edge devices. It runs on any infrastructure as long as it supports Kubernetes and supports all programming languages and developer frameworks. It can be accessed by standard HTTP or gRPC programming interfaces, and the hope is to enable developers to build microservice applications that can run on both the cloud and the edge with no code changes.
We talked about this earlier, but I kind of feel like the edge is part of the cloud. It's just the edge of the cloud. So to differentiate between those two is slightly strange, unless they're kind of including other mobile devices or IoT devices as part of the edge. I don't know, but it's very Lambda-like, or at least very Firecracker-like. So it's a bit of a Me Too thing, I think.
Yeah, it definitely is. It'd be interesting to see if we have Lambda on the edge and different edge technologies on the CDN side. It'd be interesting to see if you start seeing containers on the edge in some serious way with like Fargate.
The purpose of the edge is really just to get stuff slightly closer to the consumers.
The end user. Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
That's supposed to be building enough data centers. Everything's at the edge.
That's true. That's true. Soon you'll have with your Amazon Alexa to also include a Amazon EC2 endpoint in your house. So that's how they'll solve this problem.
But actually, speaking of that, total tangent, but the new Google Home devices, the Nest devices, since they're rebranded, now include a lot more compute power and tensor cores, so that they can move a lot of the processing to your edge.
Lovely.
To provide faster response times and do more compute at your cost, so presumably not at their cost.
Well, I mean, they'll probably charge you for both. That's the Amazon model for RDS. So why not?
I wonder if that may be interesting. You start deploying millions or tens of millions of these devices. It's sort of getting into the Skynet realm, really.
Indeed it is. Well, it's just in time for a new Terminator movie. Announcing the general availability of larger, more powerful standard file shares for Azure files. I do have to say before we get into this that I need a very comprehensive chart of all the storage options on Azure. I'm not sure I can keep this straight much longer. I might need you to work your Google Sheets magic, John, then to produce some spreadsheets.
I can try. I don't know if it supports more than 3 or 4 different dimensions. It's like it's kind of mind blowing, really. More than understanding the different services, I just like to understand why they haven't converged these into some several sensible offerings.
Well, this new one is for workloads that are latency sensitive and require a high level of performance, and so you should consider the Azure Files premium tier. Azure Files is the GA announcement, as you mentioned, as I kind of jumped to the gun here. But Azure Files is a secure, fully managed public cloud file storage with a full range of data redundancy options and hybrid capabilities using Azure File Sync. With this release of larger file shares, a single standard file share and general purpose account can now support up to 100 terabytes of capacity, 10,000 IOPS, and 300 megabits per second of throughput. Since the preview was announced a few months back, you can now there have been several enhancements, including the ability to upgrade existing general purpose storage accounts and existing file shares, ability to opt in for larger file shares at storage account instead of a subscription level, expanded regional coverage, support for both locally redundant and zonal redundant storage, and improvements in the performance and scale of Sync to work better with larger file shares.
So, presumably, I mean, not to sound too critical, but 10,000 IOPS and 300 megabits a second is kind of what my NAS at home can do. So it seems like they're providing huge capacity, but with fairly crappy performance, and I think they're actually directing you away from this service.
That's the standard file share, but the premium tier, will give you the much faster. So when this doesn't perform for you, they'll just charge you more money, and then it'll work. It's the classic example of throw more hardware at the problem.
Yes, more memory, more compute. That solves everything.
It solves all problems. All right. Well, Azure API for FHIR has moved to general availability. Of course, FHIR is the fast healthcare interoperability resource. This is Microsoft becoming now the first cloud with a fully managed first-party service to ingest, persist, and manage healthcare data in the native FHIR format. The Azure API for FHIR is generally available to all Azure customers now. This is an industry standard that has been being worked on for the last few years as a way to is a preferred standard for exchanging and managing healthcare information in electronic format. With a new API, a developer, researcher, a device maker, or anyone working with health data is empowered with a turnkey platform to provision a cloud-based FHIR service in just a minute and begin securely managing PHI data in Azure. Of course, this is a platform as a service, so customers can free up their operational resources and focus their development efforts on lighting up analytics, machine learning, and actual intelligence across their health data. Professor Neil Sieber, the Chief Research Information Officer at Ghosh, had to say, "We now have a unified API as a basis for designing, testing, and deploying the next generation of machine learning and digital services in the hospital for your young patients. This will also enable rapid and easier collaboration with our international pediatric hospital partners to share specialized tools to improve patient outcomes and experiences." There are several key features for the API for FHIR. First of all, is provisioning and start running an enterprise-grade managed FHIR service in just a few minutes, as I mentioned. Support for the R3 and R4 of the FHIR standard. Role-based access control, allowing you to manage access to your data at scale. Audit log tracking for access, creation, modification, and reads within each data store. Secure compliance in the cloud with ISO 27001 2013 certification. Supports HIPAA and GDPR and built on the HITRUST certified Azure platform. And its globally availability and protection of your data with multi-region failover and smart on FHIR functionality. So there you go. If you're in the healthcare business, this is really great.
Yeah, I remember I kind of started working in healthcare IT a long time ago, around about the dawn of the electronic health record, and it sounded like a great idea at the time. But then there were so many different competing companies providing those services. They all bid for contracts with various healthcare companies throughout the world, that nothing was interchangeable, and it became very painful to do any kind of studies, or if a patient moves house to a different region, hospitals no longer have this record which we were promised was going to be portable. And so it's really welcome, I think. And it's interesting that the people who designed the standard didn't write any software. It didn't come from any of the existing healthcare software companies. It was independently created by the people who want to use this to gather data and to exchange data with each other and partners. So it's pretty cool. So really, they're trying to call out in the announcement for FHIR v4, what they really want is input now to build services and kind of software around it to use it.
Everything you just talked about is definitely a big problem. The ability to have shareable and portable health records has been a promise for, I don't know, almost a decade or two now.
Yeah.
I remember Microsoft Health and Google Health and all these services that had this big promise to do something, and they didn't have a standard like this to really build on, and they all kind of fizzled out and died, unfortunately. So it's nice to see that the technology is finally figuring out how to do this the right way, and maybe we can get some really cool solutions sometime in the future in healthcare.
I hope so, and I'm really hoping that this helps enable kind of the next generation of sort of analytics and perhaps even AI around patient care, because one of the problems is explaining how the reasons behind your decisions, and having data available from through APIs like this will really help justify treatment outcomes for patients.
Indeed. All right. Well, that's it for the new news this week. So without Peter, we're not going to score the lightning round this week, and Jonathan and I will take turns reading through these, and so we'll see how that goes. It's a new experiment. So I'll let you go first.
Okay. AWS IoT things. Let me start that again. This is hard.
To a great start.
This is hard. It's harder than it looks, harder than it sounds. Whatever. Yeah. AWS IoT Things Graph now provides workflow monitoring with AWS CloudWatch.
I definitely want to watch my things, I guess.
Got to keep your eye on the things.
Amazon CloudWatch now sends the alarm state change events to Amazon EventBridge.
It's great, but I really hope we don't get an announcement for every single data source that can now fit into EventBridge.
Ooh, does this mean we should XNA any EventBridge additions from the lightning round?
I don't know. Maybe we can set up a CloudWatch alarm that just tells us when there's a new integration with EventBridge and just ignore them.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, we for those outside, we've made a rule that basically if it's a general availability announcement of uptime or new regional availability, we won't typically talk about on the show, just because we would spend most of the show talking about new regions that have one feature every week. And you'd be like, great, they added another region. So yeah, we kind of cut those out. But anything that's kind of repetitive like that, we sort of removed from the show.
All right. Amazon FSx for Windows File Server now enables administrators to restore activity on files locked by inactive users.
So if you didn't get your files off before you laid that guy off, now you can get them off the system. So it's good.
You definitely.
Amazon EFS now in the EC2 launch instance wizard.
Why?
Because they want to support bad practices, Jonathan.
Okay. It seems like a blurring of the lines there.
Yeah, you basically can create an EFS, and then it'll automatically get attached to your EC2 instance. And then your users who don't understand what the difference between the two drives is will just dump data onto the wrong drive, and things will go wrong. So there you go.
That sounds expensive.
Sounds very expensive.
Amazon EC2 hibernation is now available on Windows, and we have so many comments about this.
Well, I mean, only if you don't want to go over 16 gigs of memory. That's the key message there.
Yeah, it's so strange that the discrepancy between the RAM supported by Windows instances and Linux machines. I mean, we know that you can hibernate larger instances of Windows, but I mean, you can hibernate up to 150 gig or something like that of a Linux instance, but only 16 of Windows. It's a little strange.
Yeah, that's a low number. I mean, I would say that it only supports 3 or 4 of each instance type in the different groupings. It's not a very full-featured if you only can do 16 gigs of memory. So that's a weird one. I think someone demanded they do it, but it's not really ready for prime time.
It has some advantages. I'd love to use this to spin up Windows machines which are basically already booted up, already done all their checks and everything else, and the software is loaded, ready to go. It could really speed up autoscaling, because right now autoscaling for Windows is chronically slow. But don't forget that you're paying for this extra space on your disk, whether you hibernate it or not. And in the case of Windows instances, that's only going to be 16 gig of storage, but in the case of these large Linux instances, you're paying for potentially up to 150 gig of EBS volume, which you can't use for anything else.
Yeah, definitely. You can now expand your Amazon MSK clusters and deploy new clusters across 2 availability zones.
So, I mean, really, that's kind of required for cloud best practices. So
MSK has been a really weird product. Like, it was only available in one region. It was only available in one AZ for a while. Now it could do two. Like, it's a service that needs to be massively scaled and massively distributed to be effective. But I think the complexity of Zookeeper is killing them. That's how I would see it.
yeah, it seems like a difficult one to try and make work nicely in the cloud, especially as there's not a single endpoint you connect to. You used to connect to a broker which tells you where to go for your queue, and makes it hard to use private link or anything else to connect to these services. So it must be quite painful for them. There must be a very good reason why they've done this.
Yeah, especially when consider they already solved all these problems with Kinesis.
Yeah.
So.
Ding ding ding.
I forgot whose turn is it. Yours?
Yeah, it's me. Amazon Neptune now supports SparkQL 1.1 federated queries.
Sparkly.
I can just see the magic meme coming up now.
Yes, indeed. Magic. Amazon Neptune now supports streams to capture graph data changes.
Okay.
No, I mean, no one's heard of Neptune for 2 years since they announced that reInvent. So, two features every 2 years is great. So.
Just the occasional reminder that the service exists.
Yeah.
AWS code pipeline adds execution visual. Yeah. See, I didn't even drink this time. AWS, I'm going to have to add like a breathalyzer to the microphone or something before we start recording. AWS code pipeline adds execution visualization to pipeline execution history.
Okay, sounds great, I guess.
Yeah, but the code pipeline's been great when it works, but if you need to go in and debug something that didn't work, it's been horrendous to dig through logs in various places, and they're hard to correlate, and having a visualization is pretty cool. Finally.
So now you can see where your data's been lost in the process versus guessing.
Yeah, it makes for nicer PowerPoint presentations when you have to explain why stuff doesn't work.
Oh, good. That's great. Amazon DocumentDB with MongoDB compatibility adds additional aggregation pipeline capabilities, including $sign lookups.
I think they really need to rename their service to Amazon DocumentDB with some MongoDB compatibility, because a lot of these things have been missing for a long time. I'm not sure why they launched so soon without some of these missing pieces, because it's really been, I think it's a bit misleading to claim compatibility with the missing features.
Yeah, it's a little weird. I'd like to talk to somebody who's actually using DocumentDB who came from Mongo. I'm curious what that actually means and how difficult it actually was to make that transition, especially with missing things like $sign lookups. Seems like something you'd want.
Yeah, the aggregation tools were missing originally from DocumentDB, and that was one of their early criticisms. It just reminds me of VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP in Excel, which is horrendous. Where are we? AWS Managed Services, that's AMS, simplifies ServiceNow integration.
There's nothing simple about ServiceNow or integrating it.
No, it's painful to require partners to have ways to integrate with the Amazon support services.
I'm looking forward to ServiceNow Sana, which will be their competitor to HANA, because they did hire Bill McDermott as their CEO this week.
I hope their ability to execute doesn't head the same way as SAP's.
Indeed. I mean, it'll only require you to run 155 terabytes memory boxes to make ServiceNow work properly that way. So there you go. Amazon Managed Blockchain now supports Amazon CloudWatch metrics for peer nodes.
I don't know. I don't know who's going to use that.
It seems like a managed service for blockchain. You'd want to monitor peer nodes. So I guess I'm glad they had a day one feature finally. 6 months after they released this feature.
Finally, Amazon API Gateway now supports wildcard custom domain names, and the fanfares ring out, and the ticker tape falls from the sky, and we wish they just had this 3 years ago when we really, really needed it.
Yeah, I mean, several customers might not have moved to Kong or Apogee if this had been the thing. So there you go.
It really prevented us from providing a comprehensive single point of entry to our services, because we couldn't wildcard things, and I think it was a really bad oversight.
I think it was as well. That was interesting, Jonathan. We got through that relatively painlessly without Peter.
Maybe Peter wins, though, because he's probably somewhere having a bunch of fun. And
thanks for Jonathan for being here this evening. It was a long day for us at the day job, so it was good to get on here and get this recorded, and we can now go sleep. So
Absolutely. Very mentally draining, this teamwork exercises.
yes, teamwork makes the dream work, Jonathan.
And that is the Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod. Or join our Slack channel, go to our website, thecloudpod.net for sign-up instructions.
I had an alternate show title that I came up with as we were walking through one of these, and I don't remember what it was. So must not have been that good. All right. Well, again, thanks for joining me, Peter. Well, not Peter.
You mean thanks for joining me, Peter? Like.
Well, good night, everyone. Thanks a lot.
See you, Justin.